Our next speaker is Dr. Aune Valk, who is the head of analysis department in the Ministry of Education and Research in Estonia, and she has done extensive research in ethnic and national identity. So she will speak to us a little bit about the situation of the Estonian multicultural educational system. Thank you. A round of applause, please, to welcome our speaker.
Thank you so much for inviting, and happy to speak about one of my favorite topics. Actually, both of them are my favorite topics. Education is very close to my heart, as well as everything related to multiculturalism and multicultural identity, which I've been studying really now for, it's difficult to say, 25 years almost, as a psychologist from a psychological perspective. But I now work for the Ministry of Education. Everything I say should not be taken as the official statement from the ministry, rather my sort of personal view of the things. So what's today's facts? For the ones coming from abroad, we have two school systems, we could say. We have one school system, of course, but we have schools in Russian language and in Estonian language for the basic education level. For the gymnasium level, everybody has to study at least 60% of the subjects in Estonian, which means that the gymnasium education now for last 5 years is all in Estonian. Kindergartens are also in different languages, Estonian, Russian, English, and that can be different. Which have been very successful is the language immersion during last almost 20 years already. So I will talk about the facts, why we have the segregated ways of studying. I talk about the wishes or how the parents actually see how the children education should be organized. And I talk about why there could be this differences between the facts and the wishes. And then I'll really talk about my dream for the future and the first steps we make towards the dream. So today we have, in the kindergarten level, almost or around 55% of the non-Estonian speaking children, let's say it's in this way, are studying in Russian language institutions. 20% study in Estonian language institutions and 25% in language immersion programs. So in the kindergarten level, actually, we can see that there has been a very big development during the last 25 years when it was totally sort of Russian and Estonian kindergarten. Now quite a big share of parents decide to put their children to study either together with Estonians or in the immersion program. In the basic school level, which is surprising, is that the percentages are not so high. In language immersion programs, there are around 20%, and in Estonian schools, there are less than 10%. And these percentages have been quite stable during last years. So language immersion is becoming more popular. During last 10 years, we can see that both in the kindergarten and in the basic school level, the participants or the share of non-Estonian speaking children who are studying in the language immersion program have been doubled, and we don't see at the moment the sort of limit. It's still increasing. So, but not for the Estonian language schools. We don't see an increase. It has been very stable during the last 5 years. No increase in studying more together with Estonian children. So around 20% in the kindergarten level and 8% in the basic school level. So why we have this situation, and what parents would like actually? This question have been asked in integration monitoring research, which is conducted, I may be wrong now, but I think every 3 years or every 2 years. And there 32% of Russian language parents say that they prefer basic education in Estonian. And if you remember, it was 8% who actually study. So it means that there is a 4 times difference. It's a big difference between the reality and the sort of wishes. For the language immersion, the percent is quite similar. For the fact, 17% of the parents would like to put their children to the language immersion program, and actually 20% of the children study. And only 5%, which is surprising because Estonia is not so multicultural country as Sweden is, and our attitudes are not so tolerant towards the diversity. but only 5% of the parents say that they don't want sort of any multicultural and multilingual education. And actually, most of the parents, or 2/3 of the parents from both Estonian and other nations, say that Estonian language studies should start in the kindergarten. So we are much more open to study together than what actually happens. So, and there are a lot of political discussion, and we have now a new government from the last week, and again the discussion is opened that about the gymnasium level studies in Estonian language. There is a qualitative study for the integration monitoring where the Russian language upper secondary school graduates or school students were interviewed also, and they actually say that the Estonian language lessons, there should be more of them. They should start before gymnasium, and there should be promoting more communication and creating stronger common ground with the Estonians. So often the views of the students are much more open to study together, to learn more. The problem is often with teachers who are, of course, in a very difficult situation. And I totally understand that it's a crazy situation if the teacher whose mother tongue is Russian, whose Estonian is not very good, teaches in Estonian language children whose mother tongue is Russian and whose Estonian is not very good. It's a crazy situation that should not be taking place. So what is the problem with the current situation? What are the outcomes of this segregated school system, if I put it very strongly? We see that in the end of basic school, half of the young people say that they don't see the future in Estonia. Half of the young people whose mother tongue, again, is not Estonian or Russians. In different studies, there have been different terms used for the group. Mostly they are Russian-speaking, but not all of them. So let's say Russian young people don't see the future in Estonia. Of course, that's not the reality. Of course, it doesn't mean that 50% of them leave, but it means that the language or the motivation to learn the language is very low, because if you don't see your future here, so why to learn the language? So it means that that creates a sort of motivation problem to learn the language. And the reality is that in the last year, there was a study, the study was made a few years ago by Praxis, which showed that in the last year of the gymnasium, every third Russian-speaking gymnasium graduate is saying that they have concrete plans to leave next year. And among Estonian-speaking students, it's 7%. It's a huge difference. Of course, it's understandable that young people want to see the world. Hopefully, they come back. Of course, not all of them come back, but still, I think the question is about the difference. About half of them actually leave. If the same students were asked, or they tried to the same students in the autumn, they realized that approximately half of them realized the plan, but it's still a very big percent. So, and what we see, different studies show different numbers, but we have made one comparative study among the gymnasium students a few years ago, again among Latvian, Estonian, Finnish, and Swedish gymnasium students, asking about their different identities and historical conscientiousness. And it showed that there is, what I want to actually make you sort of your attention is this 42 or 41.8% here, which is the percentage of Russian-speaking Estonian students who say that national identity or being a citizen of Estonia is important for them, important or very important, which is twice as less as among Estonian students, which is 83%. Just for sort of background data, there is this sort of 4-country average, Latvian, Estonian, Finnish, and Swedish average. Swedish students actually in this study, which I don't have time for going in depth, but Swedish students had very low collective identities in all of these categories. Let's say only global and Scandinavian were sort of important categories, and national identity much lower than in other 3 countries. What I have to say is in Latvia, for example, we also differentiated between the two groups, because just to show how different the groups are about different identities, not just about national identity, but for example also about Nordic identity, which is very important for Estonian-speaking students, but not so important for the Russian speakers. But in Latvia, the national identity, or being the citizen of Latvia, was important for 60% of local Russian-speaking Latvians. So we have done something wrong here in Estonia compared to Latvia, so that the national identity is less important for our non-Estonian speakers. So another question which is more discussed, I mean, identity issues are more discussed among the researchers here in Estonia, and not so much among the Minister of Education, because it seems to be that it's kind of a personal matter of everybody. It's we don't see it as a matter of education so much, and we don't see it so much as a political question. But my personal point of view is that actually school is the crucial point for developing national identity. We just don't say it loudly. This is something that happens there. Anyway, language issue is something that we discuss very much in the ministry, and which is we have the strategic aims to get a certain level. And the aim at the moment is that 90% of the basic school graduates should get a B1 level, which is actually the minimum level. I mean, it's not enough to study in the gymnasium, actually. But at the moment, only 2/3 of the basic school graduates whose mother tongue is not Estonian get this level. It clearly shows that it's not enough what we are doing in the basic education. And more about the reality, it's only 20% or 1/5 of the Russian youth use Estonian language every day, which means that it's a kind of a subject they study at school. And you may think why I'm talking about this, but the language skills are very closely related to the general sort of academic performance in the end of basic school. And it shows that we just start too late, because if you start with the language learning earlier, then it's not basically related to your IQ or your general academic abilities, because everybody is able before the age of 10 to learn the second language basically on the level of mother tongue. But if you start late, of course, it's becoming a kind of intellectual exercise. So my dream, how to come over from this situation. My dream of multicultural school is mainly about the basic school. Currently, we have turned our attention to the Estonian language learning to the secondary education, where the studies are quite difficult already, and where it depends very much what is your sort of level of language when beginning. In the basic school, starting from the first form, it can be made much more in the playful way, the language learning. It's not so much sort of academic exercise, not yet. So basically what I'm talking about is a basic school. And in my mind, in the end of basic school, if you know the language, the gymnasium can be in any language. In Russian, English, it doesn't matter. If you got the basic ability to manage in this society, and basic education is compulsory for all, gymnasium education is not anymore. Second point, what I want to say is it has to be proactive strategy of the school. It shouldn't be something that happens and the school and the parents and the teachers are not ready. And then we can, of course, say it fails because, I mean, there are so many problems. Teachers can't manage the classroom where there are students who can't speak Estonian fluently, and children are starting to bullying each other. And I mean, I come from the Soviet time. I got my education in the Soviet time, and I do remember about this kind of fights in the streets between the different communities or ethnic groups. So it has to be proactive strategy of the school, preparing parents, creative, positive image. In Estonia, we have the image for avatud, hea algus for the kindergarten and the school system. It could be something like open beginning or the avatud algus, for example, just an idea. There should be, and here I would like to have the discussion afterwards with the Swedish experience. I think there should be clear strategy for recruiting the students. So it shouldn't happen there shouldn't be the case that some schools become sort of totally composed of children from the other nations, and so that the Estonian parents start to take away the children from these schools. So there should be sort of balance between between children from different ethnicities. In my mind, it could be something around 25% from others and 75 Estonian, but it could be something else also. When asked from the parents in the integration monitoring and what I referred before, then parents, of course, have different pictures. Estonian parents foresee this kind of school that there are only 1-2 Russian-speaking students in the Estonian class, and Russian-speaking parents think that they should be half-half. So it's the kind of image of the multicultural classroom is different in different heads. Main language in this school should be Estonian, and if needed, of course, additional classes in Estonian in the beginning, so everybody could start at least speak and understand Estonian quickly. And if we could see that 50% almost actually come from the kindergartens, where they got quite good Estonian skills, so not all the children should have the problem in the beginning. I would rather think that there is not so much need for the additional classes, but if there is, they should certainly be. So, which is very important and which is not existing at the moment in Estonian schools, to my mind. I don't know, maybe there are any school that has it, but high level of mother tongue classes and background culture learning. And some subjects also in English, if there are more English speaking students or Russian. I think that Estonian children studying in this school, they should also have some subjects or hobby classes in another language, either in Russian or in English. And this is for different reasons. In order them to practice it, in order them to put the children who come from the other backgrounds also in the situation that they can be better, and they can show that that the Estonian children would understand that what does it mean to do something in the wrong language, in different language, and also for them to practice it, which is helpful to create the common ground is European identity. We have seen from different studies that the students who have more stronger European identity, they also have more open attitude, they also have a stronger national identity. So sort of developing the understanding of Europeanness should be part of the school. Identity is my favorite topic. And there are very interesting studies made by Maie Soll, for example, about how Russian students who are studying either in Estonian school or in the language immersion programs, how difficult it is for them to develop double identity. They struggle with the name, with the accent, with the attitudes of the others. So what does it mean to be Russian Estonian or Estonian Russian, however you want to call? And it should be made easy and positive, the image of belonging to two cultures. I have made tens and tens of interviews in my research with multicultural people, and 95% of them are very happy about the situation. They're happy to belong, they see it as a resource, and that's the way we should make it also in this school. In the textbooks, in the way teachers are reacting. One of the teacher I know who's teaching in this language immersion program, with the students at the 3rd class asked me, I have Russian students, they have Russian parents, the Russian parents don't speak Estonian at home. And the students start to say to me, we are Estonian. What should I say to them? So can they be Estonian? Should I encourage it? Should I say that you can't be because your parents are Russian? And of course, I mean, there is only, from my point of view, there is only one sort of correct answer, that you are Russian and Estonian. You don't have to make a choice. But these kind of questions are in the heads of teachers. So that's something that should be dealt. In the beginning, there should be the sort of relation building should be part of the education, and it's important that they sort of have cross-cultural games in the beginning and later classes about the communication and the problems and so they could become also experts in cross-cultural communication, not just being in the environment. And last slide about the dream is it's a question of textbooks. One of the workshops was here about the history, multi-perspective history. Citizenship education is certainly one of the classes where this can be taught, and literature. If you look to the world literature, then it seems like the best literature is written about by the people who are multicultural by themselves. And of course, the key question are the teachers, how open they are, and maybe in the lower classes also bilingual teachers are needed in order to help students if they need. It's not just a dream. We have started a year ago to create a concept of multicultural school in Estonia. What we see at the moment in the schools where there are more students from other nations is actually the sort of assimilation orientation. There is no high level of teaching of mother tongue in these schools, nor the background culture. There is little attention to the relations, so the best strategy in these kind of schools for the non-Estonian children is to assimilate. It's to sort of learn the language as quickly as possible and to be as similar as possible to the Estonian students. And this year we started a pilot in 4 schools and 1 kindergarten, and based on the pilot we would like to develop a policy. So we'll see how it goes for the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Aune, very much. I would like to ask you a very quick question before we move on to the next speaker. You are an insider, basically, in the ministry, and all of the information that you gave us in regards to the statistics, it seems as if most parents and people agree that language should be taught much earlier. So my question is this: why is this not implemented, or what does it come down to?
I think it's not just a language question, but the language is actually taught in kindergarten. There is certainly a lack of good language teachers. And another thing is, if you just teach the language without practicing it every day, then it is the teaching of language. And then it's of course, there is a teaching of language in the basic school, and in actually majority of the basic schools also teach some of the subjects in Estonian, even if they don't have to do it. It's not compulsory. But it's the outcome is still not there. So I would say that it's done. Probably it's not done enough.
And the reason
and the question is, it's only the learning of language in the classroom, not so much about practicing.
Okay, thank you very much.